Welcome everyone to the year-end session, session 21 of Approaching the New Normal in Education. And The four of us are here: Saurabh Nanda, Priyank Sharma, Pallavi Ghosh, and Jasleen Kalra. Praneeth could not join us today. So today's topic is about career decisions during COVID-19, or for that matter, any particular crisis. How do you make decisions for COVID or any crisis and all the circumstances surrounding it? So um, I think let's just begin with our introductory comments about let's I think we should start about our own personal journeys also during these 9 months. I think it's also a good year-end discussion to have, reflect on what we did in the past 9 months since the lockdown began, and see where our decisions have landed us, and then we can probably theorize and think more about what kind of career decisions are possible during crises. So let me begin with Pallavi. Pallavi, how have your past 9 months been like?
It has been a mix of everything, I can say. I have I have never been a person who has worked from home. It's always on ground. So the last 9 months was like completely work from home. So that is one thing. You will be hearing sounds of the metro. I'm so sorry. I'm traveling. So you'll be hearing the sound of the metro. So yeah, it's a new phase for me because I am not habituated of working from home. And then working from home means a lot of discipline, self-discipline. So of course, adapting to it was a big challenge. But then now I have become so habituated with it that now if I have to think that मुझे office में जाके काम करना पड़ेगा, so that's like giving me a lot of fear inside my head. So yeah, so it was good. So it's a learning phase because everything is online. पहले online नहीं था बहुत कुछ, सब कुछ physical था. सब कुछ में you have to be physically available. But yeah, so I think it has its pros and cons. For me, it was both.
That's very heartening to know, actually, and we're all glad that you are finally able to come out of the work from home. I mean, we can all see the metro behind you, and you're still dedicated towards your work, so that is amazing to see. Um, so, Priyank, how have the last 9 months been for you?
I think for a researcher, except the fact that you can't go to the field, it has not created a lot of difference. But I would say everything, when you talk about career decisions or you talk about research also, everything is getting aligned now with COVID. Because when we talk about in our research arena, when you talk about कि क्या नया research है, क्या करना है, what do you want to, what is the new topic you want to work on, everybody is surrounding himself or herself with what effect COVID has had, what impact it has had, or how you can look research in times of COVID. So it has, of course, created new opportunities, but so particular as a researcher, it has not been a problem because everything has moved online for me, and we used to do a lot of work anyways with us. Like there was no classes for you had to research, but field visit, since schools are not open and it's still a problem. And the fact that somewhere, like for example my friends who are in IT, their careers have seen a jolt in the sense that they don't have to go to the office, so the home has become the office and it is a 24 into 7 wala office. uh, it's work all the time, it's no work, so it's not like there is time duration or anything. There's no as such office to घर ही हो गया तो हर वक्त काम करना है जब भी काम. It's like that. But I feel overall, I think for me particularly, it has seen a slight change in terms of how we look at research. Suddenly, everybody wants to align itself with the facets of COVID-19 in the arena of research.
That's quite interesting. I mean, so if everyone wants to align their interests along with COVID-19 and the associated topics, uh, so does that show that there is a decline in other research areas, or there has been like both from the candidates' perspective, also the researchers' perspective, and from the organizations which are providing funding? Do you see any change in their interests? when it comes to research areas of other domains?
For organizations, definitely, because somehow the funding, edtech, everything is getting a boom, because you see technology as a solution to many of the problems. So there is funding boom in the field of edtech and technology oriented stuff. But for pupils' interest, I would say it is not a shift from what they were earlier interested into now in COVID. It is like whatever they want to work in, they are aligning itself to COVID-19 situation. For instance, if somebody wants to work in the policy space, so they are looking at how is COVID-19 affecting the policy space. Our national education policy, it didn't talk about any pandemic per se and whatever. How does how do you situate national education policy in this current situation of pandemic? So all of that, it is just aligning yourself, looking at from this perspective as well.
Right. So that's very interesting to know. I mean, like a short span of around 9 months. Time-wise, it has been short, but yes, the impact of the pandemic has been so great that entire organizations are completely shifting their focus on other things. So, Jasleen, how have your 9 months been? We all know that you finished your fellowship, and then this began. So, how have your 9 months been like?
I think I was very, for last 2 years, I was very used to working on ground. Like, I was working with children in communities where technology, uh, was a major gap. And, having worked from on ground for like, for last, 2, 3 years, I think this pandemic, shifted a lot of things, the way how, work looks like. So I was in the last leg of my fellowship when, this hit. And even getting students to you know uh, first problem was accessibility, devices in it, and just working with the students कि उनके पास devices arrange हो जाए somehow, collecting funds, mobilizing resources. I think the initial time was spent like that. And then like my fellowship ended, I got a break for 2-3 months before my next job began. So I think that 2-3 months was a really exploration kind of a journey. Like I did things that I never did before. So I read, I cooked a lot, I baked. So it gave a lot of time for me to reflect what I need to do. And then I met you guys, and then ANN happened. So I think a lot of things happened simultaneously during that time. And then I just joined my new job, where I go to work thrice a week, and then alternately I work at home. So it's absolutely new experience, working in a government setup, that is adapting to pandemic, that is adapting to new technologies, that is revamping policies and schemes and everything. It's a new thing that I'm experiencing all together. And I always wanted to work at a government level and see, keep behind the scenes kya hota, what are the challenges. So I'm just witnessing everything. So it's a great learning experience for me. Yeah, like 2020 has been a great learning journey.
So, Jasleen, I mean, you talked about your new job in the government, and that's very interesting. Do you see that there are more jobs from the government sector now, or has there been a change in the number of jobs that they're offering? Any new trend which is showing up?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen a lot of government vacancies that have come up for youth like us, like who want to get into government job. So these jobs are, there's one way that you get through, civil service examination and you have a permanent job. But people are not able to fulfill that dreams due to limited capacity. There are n number of ways that we can just get involved with the government. There are a lot of fellowships that the state government is providing and the central government is providing. There are fellowship provided by different organizations like Tata Trust, aspirational district fellowship, where you work at district level with the bureaucrats and various officers and improve that district. And then there are organizations like think tanks like Niti Aayog. They have consultant roles in ministries. A lot of ministries, they're hiring uh, you know uh, consultants and on people on contractual role for different, like in technology, in policy implementation, in research. Uh, then we have organizations like QCI, FICCI. So n number of Invest India. So a lot of positions are opening where you get a chance to work, at a systemic level. So this year I've seen a lot of vacancy and a lot of trends that are shifting. Like पहले होता था कि the only route to get into was UPSC or SSC, but this year, like I've seen this change in trend in last 2 years. He through fellowship, through contractual role, uh, you know, um, part-time roles, a lot of positions opening up at this level.
So that throws another interesting question. I mean, so since so many vacancies are opening up, is there a consolidated place where the government is putting up these vacancies and asking for people to apply, or is it just as random as it used to be before?
So basically, if there are vacancies like Niti Aayog or a consultant role at a ministry, you will find these positions at a website. There's no consolidated, portal that like have that like kind of a like there's a job portal like that. So I've not come across anything like that. And then there are a lot of NGOs who are working with the government, and they are creating positions where people can work directly with the government. For example, Tata Trust. So you are on a payroll of a Tata Trust, but then you have a chance to work with the bureaucrats. So वो Tata Trust का हो जाता है. So there are a lot of other avenues, मतलब different avenues that are spread across, but there's no consolidated platform that has all the information where you can work directly with the government.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So coming to another aspect, okay, I think I missed my time. The past 9 months have been very interesting for me as well, because well, I was supposed to move to Delhi, and there was an entire thing planned, and I was working with one of the companies that I've worked with for around 7 years, and we were going to increase that engagement a lot. But then COVID situation happened, and moving to Delhi was out of the question. And I was at home, so first 1 month I was not doing anything, just reading about COVID and what it is doing to the world. But after that, I decided to pursue some of the passions that I always wanted to do. I started a podcast, took out a lot of time to discuss about education, and ANN education is a result of that also. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have participated in such a forum before COVID-19. I mean, I'm not really sure, but that definitely happened. So I'm very glad for that. And the other factor is now more and more of my clients, they have accepted the fact that online is perfectly normal. It is as good as meeting somebody in person. The things happen, they happen quite smoothly. So those things have definitely happened with me. There's a drastic change in my customer behavior, and obviously with the services that we offer. So that was my last 8-9 months. Pallavi, the next question is also a very pertinent question when it comes to professionals. You actually moved from Bangalore to Delhi, and we can see the glorious Delhi metro stations in your background. Was that transition easy, difficult? How did you manage during this entire situation?
I think if COVID did not happen, then I would never have shifted to Delhi. So I can say that COVID was responsible for me to shift to Delhi. Of course, it was a big decision because we drove 4 days. So definitely, but then because I work completely on human rights and social development, so I can say that you cannot stay at home. Like people, those who are able to stay at home, they are very fortunate and very lucky, because we, as a country, India, like India, all of us know that it's a third world country or whatever. Even if it's a first world country, it's impossible to stay at home, because if we are not going out, how are we going to do our work? How are we going to manage our work? That's the first question. And then some organizations or maybe some departments can think of working from home, but not all, because we know that we are in a sector where we have to be always on the ground. So already 9 months of staying at home kind of blocked our work. Now it's impossible. Of course, if you look at Delhi, you will see everybody is going out now. Like, so this is the situation. So I think if we are able to stay at home, we are lucky, we are fortunate, but it's a matter of time. COVID is the virus. Of course, the virus, it's a matter of time. Everyone will get that virus. So now I am also not scared. I'm like, jo hoga dekha jayega. But then somewhere I feel that, of course, COVID has changed our life. And then COVID नहीं भी होता तो फिर थोड़ा अलग होता मेरा शिफ्टिंग, लेकिन कोविड के वजह से वी हैड अ रियली डिफिकल्ट टाइम. बहुत मुश्किल था. एक एक जगह में बार बार सैनिटाइज करना, बार बार ट्रैवल करना. It's very difficult. People, those who were planning to go abroad, they canceled their trips. Like Saurav said, Saurav wanted to shift to Delhi, but then he canceled. So, lot of issues. But personally, I will say that COVID was a life-changing decision in my life. COVID played a big role in changing a lot of decisions in my life.
And are these new decisions for good, or do you think they're temporary and you might have to change again?
I think these new decisions are good because in the last 2 years, my activism had taken a little bit of halt after coming to Bangalore. But in some way, I'm grateful to COVID because that kind of triggered my activism back again when I'm on ground in Delhi. So I am somewhere thankful to COVID, you can say.
That's a very interesting perspective. You know, the silver lining because of COVID-19. And I think I'll just move to Priyank now, because silver lining for education is definitely one of the inspirations for our forum as well. Priyank, what is the general situation for researchers now? As in, because of COVID-19, a lot of funds were taken away from universities, or they did not have any funds left or to dedicate to new researchers. Do you think that research, that funding is coming back soon? What is the trend like?
See, I think I'm not sure that if I'm eligible to answer this, because it is a very, what to say, broad question, and I don't have a very deep insight on on levels of funding. But I can definitely say how much ever I've interacted with universities, that the funding has reduced, and it's not coming back anytime soon. Like the normal, the normal is not going to be normal soon. And even if it is in terms of funding, I'm saying maybe we'll not have the same normal ever, but in terms of funding, I'm not seeing it that it is going back the way it was earlier. It is going to take a bit of a time, because the priorities of the government have shifted. The organization, the corporates, and everything is now has shifted for some good reasons. So it is going to take a bit of a time.
All right. And is the situation similar both in India and abroad?
Yeah, I would say some. See, if you talk about America, for example, some universities are anyway really well funded. So the problem only comes when their funding also was dependent on RAs and TAs. That how you research, as a research assistant, you work with the professor. As a teaching assistant, you teach a undergraduate or a graduate class. So that per se is not existing. So there's no classes happening as such. or or the opportunities have reduced. But in terms of the university funding, I would say that there are universities which are still very well funded, of course, and there are universities which are not. So they have pulled off their funding, and they are not taking as many. Either they're not taking as many graduate students as they were taking earlier, or they are taking, they are not giving that kind of funding which they were giving earlier. And then if you move to other parts, like I think it is similar in many cases. Australia specifically, I think I don't see anywhere where the funding is the way it was, like fully funded, and I think it has seen a great dip. Apart from that, I think it is very similar in other places.
That is very true. I mean, even if you research, or you go to these university websites in any country, a lot of those departments just give this big broad message that we are not taking any more research candidates for the foreseeable future. Some universities say 2021, we are not taking anybody for 2021, but some universities are just saying for the foreseeable future, we don't know if we will be able to offer any research positions. And that is very sad. In
Right.
fact, this brings out another question that I had in mind. I always had this question in mind. Um, Universities like the Ivy League, or if we talk about the poster boy of universities in the world, Harvard, which is the richest university also. I think they have some 30 or 40 billion dollar endowment, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken my figures.
40 billion.
Do you think
40 billion.
yeah, so do you think that Harvard, being a stalwart of education, also recognizes that the contribution of other universities in the ecosystem? Do you think Harvard should extend a helping hand to other universities, or is it just cutthroat competition again?
See, I will say it is very independent anyway. But think of it this way: that Harvard would have seen some lag in her side, whatever its side also.
Hmm.
Now, Harvard, as such, if it had some money to offer, it could have given to universities which were existing earlier, matlab, state universities or universities which needed money funding. So the helping hand could have done earlier also. It is because the endowment is huge, huge. So as such, I would not see Harvard doing anything like that, because even if the endowment is huge, it would have seen some hit, and it will definitely, I don't see Harvard thinking कि भाई हम पहले फंड करते हैं, जब उनके पास पैसा था तब फंड नहीं किया, क्योंकि क्रंच तो यूनिवर्सिटीज में तब भी था ना, देयर वर यूनिवर्सिटीज which are struggling even then they had huge amount, then they didn't do it. Then I don't know if it, even if it is a great idea to do it, I have no idea. But just thinking in that way, I don't think Howard is going to do anything
Yeah.
of that sort.
In fact, just to add on to that particular point and continue from that inference, Harvard, even though it had 40 billion odd dollars in its endowment, did very little to support its existing staff and students. Some of them had to quit, or some of them were fired because of the pandemic. I mean, they clearly said it is because of the pandemic, and they were not really in a position to offer more research positions and scholarships and whatnot, because they would just not touch their endowment fund. I think it's all that entire money is caught up in investments which are very complex and very huge to take out. It just doesn't make monetary sense to take out that money from the existing investments that they have already. So rather than acting as an educational institution for the progress of humanity, I mean, it's more like a corporation. So very interesting.
I think every private, I think that's the case for every private university.
Yeah. Jasleen, so you had plans of continuing your education, pursuing a master's, and so what are those plans like? How have they been impacted? Are you rethinking your plans? Have you changed the direction of your study plans to some other course? How has it been?
I think my plans, I've not changed my plans, uh, because this decision I think varies from people to people, like at what stage are like they at in their lives. So basically, I am at a stage where I just want to finish off my education and I can't delay it. I would not want to delay it anymore. And there are people who are at a stage that they can afford to delay their education and they're delaying it. So I think this decision varies to person. Like, I don't think COVID has affected my plans particularly, but for others I can't comment on that.
So even you were thinking of applying abroad as well, right?
Yes.
Have you seen any change in the attitude of the universities towards foreign students?
I think they become more flexible in terms of documentation. Like if you mail them that you don't have a particular document, they become quite understanding and accommodating. And if you convey that certain things are not working out, like you're not able to procure transcripts or you're not able to get a recommendation in time, I think they become accommodating in that sense. It's just that you need to intimate them in advance. So yeah, and I've seen that a lot of universities have waived off their test scores, GRE, GMAT. That's another trend that I've noticed, particularly in US, that generally ask for the test score. So that's another trend, that's seen, like a lot of good universities have waived it off. So yeah, like universities have become quite accommodating and they're viewing the application very holistically. if certain things are not working out in the right direction.
Hmm. And what about the visa regulations or anything? Do you think they have become more stringent or tougher or something?
The universities that I am, like the places that I am targeting, till now I've not come across any problem. But for others like US and Canada, I'm not really sure, like I can't comment on that.
Right. So actually, I completely agree with you, Jasleen, over there, because I've seen a lot of my clients and students, Canadian universities, American universities, they just say you don't need to submit your SAT or GRE or GMAT. In fact, these companies, GMAC and Pearson, what they have done is they have allowed people to take their tests from home. So
Hmm.
now you can take GMAT from home. The only thing is you will not be allowed to take the AWA section, which is the writing section. That is
Hmm.
something which is not allowed because probably you can copy something, right?
Hmm.
But apart from that, you can take the test from home. TOEFL was the first standardized test which was offered from home. Um, and slowly, everyone is kind of adapting and adjusting to it, which also raises a very important question. Like, if they're completely okay accepting candidates based on other things, do we really need these standardized scores or standardized tests at all? Uh,
Yeah, that's something that I was wondering. But then, I don't think that they can ever waive off these scores because, for example, Harvard or Stanford, they require certain kind of academic credentials. Uh, you know,
well,
that particular academic credentials, and they need that score for
that
certain
is
kind of
definitely.
programs.
That is
Yeah.
definitely true. But then, then Pearson is also sometimes called the mafia of education. And
Hmm.
if it wants to push, TOEFL or GRE down the throats of many universities, it will. And that's essentially what happens in the US. Whereas universities in Canada, Australia, they don't really ask for GRE. So, well, that's a discussion we can probably have at another session. Um,
Yes.
so, talking about myself, I did not really have education plans as such. I mean, I don't believe in going to a big university and spending a lot of money and time in educating myself. I usually educate myself quite well outside. Um, but I was really like the only education that I really follow is distance education. I think it's good enough. So my master's in psychology from IGNOU. I started another course which is postgraduate diploma in sustainability sciences because I'm really interested in sustainability. So that's a 1-year diploma course from IGNOU, and I was expecting it to be really, really a bad experience, but surprisingly, IGNOU partnered up with Google, and probably now they have created the largest university online. I don't know what even to call it, ecosystem in the world, because IGNOU has so many courses, and it was already the largest university in the world. But so they have created something really unique, and I'm really enjoying that experience. Regular webinars, very uh, upfront close interaction with the senior professors from IGNOU, who you cannot really talk to because IGNOU is all about distance learning. So if I'm living in Punjab right now, and all those professors are basically in Delhi, so I will never be interacting with them. But because of the virtual engagement, I'm able to interact with the senior most professors at IGNOU for that particular course, and they're experts in their field. So that is a very enriching experience. I think I'm getting much more return on the very small 5,500 rupee investment that I made with IGNOU for that course. But there was another thing I was really interested in, which got kind of delayed. Last year, I was part of a fellowship in Japan, and that's when I realized that the world considers people youth below the age of 35, right? So I was like, okay, I turned 33 this year, and I thought I will apply to another such experience abroad, and check out another country, meet more people, broaden my network. But because of the COVID-19 lockdown and all the associated things, those fellowships have been cancelled, or they have been postponed, or the visa norms are there, so you can't really apply for a visa, or you can't even enter a new country. Those things have kind of pushed my plans a little bit. So I'm not sure when I'll be able to participate in such a program. The other thing is all these programs have made use of the virtual world so well. They've scaled down and scaled up simultaneously. They've scaled down their physical operations, which costed a lot of money, but they've scaled up their online operations. And now in the same fellowship, for example, the most recent one that I'll talk about is from India, Jagriti Yatra. In Jagriti Yatra, they would take some 500 odd people and take them in a train all over the country, right? This time they're doing a virtual Jagriti Yatra. It's free of cost. It's 5,000 people in that virtual Jagriti Yatra. It's amazing. I mean, nobody could have even imagined that such, scalability was possible. So I think COVID-19 has done that as well.
But then I just want to ask you, can this virtual experience really replace that, train journeys, spending 15, 20 days in a train and then meeting new people, visiting new communities, going to new places, and having that experience on ground? I think, this is something that cannot, be replaced by a virtual platform.
I agree with
So,
you. It can never be replaced. But you know what people have done then? So I also did a podcast with Miss Elizabeth Masamune. She's an ex-diplomat and she was the chief MD of the Awaji Youth Federation, the fellowship that I was part of in Japan last year. So they were doing recruitment for the third cohort. I was part of the second cohort. And I asked her the same question, like, how are you going to do this? And she explained that they're using technology in a very, very innovative way. What they're doing is now they are directly engaging with people sitting in Hong Kong, sitting in Tokyo, sitting in Seoul and other places of the world simultaneously. So the experience, the in-person experience, I don't think it can ever be replicated, no matter, even if we have the latest technology and everyone is, talking to holograms or using VR sets for virtual reality. I don't think it can ever be replicated. But what they have done is they have used all the other advantages associated with technology to create newer experiences, right? So earlier it was just impossible to interact with some people. Now it is completely possible and actually collaborate. I mean, the perfect example is an education. I mean, we started off with what, three cities like Jalandhar, Delhi, and Bangalore. Who would have thought that this would happen? So yeah, what do you guys think about this? I mean, what Jasleen just asked. Pallavi.
So I think the fact that we are in the 21st session, that itself speaks like it's a learning for all of us, and we did not think that it will go so much. We had multiple discussions, we had a lot of guests, and then I was in Bangalore, I have shifted to Delhi, now I am traveling still, that feeling that no, I should be part of the conversation. So I think we have achieved a lot in terms of this forum also. Like earlier we used to have guests, we used to do it every week. Now we are doing it fortnightly. Also we have all of us together. Sometimes most of us are busy, like Jaslyn's office has started, my office has started, but still we are trying to somehow keep it going. That itself says that we are really very much passionate about this, and then that is something which is very good about this. This is what I can say.
Young, what do you think?
See, mm, I think first of all, I think we have this online and offline का जो हम direct comparison है ना, we have to stop doing that. It's not a one or the other. There's a lot of gray, मतलब, in the sense that it cannot be one against two. It has to be looked at that what is one giving us and what is two giving us. If you look at individually, they both are great. For example, Jagrati Yatra was serving or providing that platform with cost, you know, and it was not a nominal cost. I don't remember, but I remember it was not a nominal cost. With cost to 500 people. Now it is, of course, it will not have the same impact as it has had at the as the offline thing had. But now it is going 5,000 free of cost. Look at the range which has come into picture, and that too free of cost. Not everybody can afford it. No? So I feel that it's a great idea, to give it free of cost to 5,000 people. There's a lot of diversity which will come in. The range is huge now. And so when we look at the ifs and buts, the pros and cons of the both sides, and then we have to all start thinking in terms of blended form, that how we can take from one, we can have this as well. I think tomorrow also, if Jagrati Yatra wants to do a 500, why not do the 500 as well as the 5,000? So people who can afford go for 500, so people who cannot go for the 5,000. Why have to be, it has to be ki karna hai ya nahi karna. So that way I think it can, both can add to each other.
And that is the way forward, right? I mean, blended is the way forward. The business models of these, self-sustaining organizations are going to revolve around that. So, we will see a lot of new things happening, as in subscription models will come up. So you don't really need to attend Jagriti Yatra only in December and January when it used to happen. Probably they'll do it every 3 months then, or more often, because all you need to do is log in online and see what's happening, and just take part, participate in the activities. And I think that's a big disruption in a way for a lot of organizations which were already doing this. And suddenly the but the value does decrease, right? I mean, if somebody says I went to Jagriti Yatra in 2017, or somebody is like, I'm an Obama Foundation fellow from 2014, and now that all these things are available online, everyone is invited, everyone wants to collaborate, the value, the brand value definitely decreases. What do you think about that, you guys? Like universities, schools, fellowships, everything they're doing online, and they're not doing a very good job of it. In fact, there are better resources available free of cost on YouTube and some other places to learn from. Do you think this brand dilution is going to change in the way people pursue opportunities? Let's start with Jasleen.
Um, so basically, yeah, like I was just reading, a post on LinkedIn. Now these days, everybody is from Harvard. Anybody can be from a Stanford. Because we are providing these certification, these courses, these programs. At a cheaper cost or at free. I think the brand dilution, a brand gets diluted, definitely. Because you open any LinkedIn profile, this certification from this program, even if that is free of cost. So we actually don't know, like, what is the value of that program, what are the learnings of the program, uh, you know what are the skill set one has acquired. So everything is just getting diluted, and the line between uh, what you have and what you portray is also getting very blurred.
Mm.
uh, so that's my opinion on that.
What do you think, Pallavi?
I have a very, I am very skeptical with this, because I myself have seen that you were talking about Awaji. So I remember one of my intern had got through Awaji, and he went, and this time another one wanted to apply. And so I feel there will be a lot of change, and there are a lot of things that we will miss, because जो physical feeling है ना, to enjoy the whole thing. Like for example, a lot of my friends have been part of Jagriti Yatra, the train traveling all across. It's like we will miss that. और ऑनलाइन में तो अभी यूएन ने भी बहुत सारे कोर्सेज खोल दिए हैं कि आप ऑनलाइन में इतने आवर्स करो और इतना आपको सर्टिफिकेट मिल जाएगा. सो इट्स वेरी इजी. सो कहीं ना वो एक कंपटीशन जो था कि ओके वी नीड टू बी मोर अपडेटेड, we need to study more, we need to do research more, so that we can be able to clear that part or go or clear that fellowship. वो नहीं है. Like I think that is somewhere losing out. And then everybody is doing everything. Another thing that I've observed is that the network. For example, the other day I was checking that someone who has got through Acumen Fellowship has got through Ashoka Fellowship, has got through Aspen Fellowship. So you see the same group of people kind of getting through all the fellowships, then it's like not everybody will get the chance. I think so somewhere it's getting diluted. That's what I feel.
Very interesting. So when you say, the same kind of people and the same network is making use of these opportunities. So even though these opportunities are intended to democratize access to such opportunities, but do you feel that they're still not reaching out to all the people who should have they reached out to?
No, definitely not, because I have seen that. So there is this network that keeps on, because they do a lot of reference check and they do a lot of background search. So somehow the same network keeps on verifying and referring the same kind of people, because I think when you have so many fellowships, everybody should be able to get through those fellowships. But it's like the same network of people. So somehow I feel a lot of people are getting disheartened because of the fact. And then now fellowships is about the fact that, like, how much of work you have done in terms of social development, and also things have completely changed. And with this online thing, so I don't think it is. It's more of a competition, or it's kind of progressing. Rather, it's getting more and more deteriorated or diluted. But again, that's a personal opinion.
Right. Priyank, what are your opinions?
See, I personally I don't feel a problem with brand dilution. मतलब मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि earlier also if you see who went to Harvard, do you think everybody got to go to Harvard? How much ever wonderfully talented and you know whatever experience you had, you still those people went to Harvard who could hire a top-notch consultant who could build their profile and वो consultant की profile को कहाँ से कहाँ पहुंचा उनका SOP और वो curate करे और those people. So you had to have the ability to hire or at least be guided by people who know what stuff goes into getting to Harvard. So I think it was never ever the brand was still restricted in that sense always. And now that it is getting diluted, it was for me it was already diluted in that sense क्योंकि वो वैसे भी कुछ लोग तक ही था. Fellowship also I will feel if you pick one fellowship, if you're young India fellow, it is easier for you to get another fellowship. वो पहले भी था before COVID happened. If you see some profiles, मैंने जैसे I was talking to Jasleen some time back and I was referring to an individual. उसके सारी ही fellowship I think उसने कर रखी थी. Because if you get one fellowship, it is easier for you to apply to that and कि मैं इसका fellow हूँ. Then the third one gets more easy. So in that respect, I think I don't have a problem with brand dilution. Let everyone taste Harvard. चाहे वो ऑनलाइन ही हो उसको देखने दो चाहे गाली देने दो चाहे कुछ भी करने दो but I think it is I don't personally have a problem with any kind of brand dilution.
But then, so if you don't see it that way, what Pallavi said is also very important, because then the standardization, the benchmarking of somebody's qualification when they say something on LinkedIn or their resume that this is who I am, this is what I've done, that becomes very questionable, and you're bound to become skeptical and cynical about it. Then what is the ultimate result of investing your time and effort in such a thing when people are going to be skeptical about it?
नहीं but people still have to be skeptical ना मतलब मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा कि if somebody has a degree from Harvard, how does it speak for itself so much? मतलब why does it speak for it so much? When the Harvard degree, मतलब I know people who got into M.Ed in Harvard and I know कि उन्होंने किस consultant से help लिया था, who curated their profile. So अब वो Harvard में पढ़ के they would have I might say कि ठीक है they would have got some insights and everything, then that means anybody who could get into Harvard can be a person. Na? Matlab, you're getting my point. What I'm trying to say is that if you create a profile of any student who could get into Harvard, he or she will definitely gain from Harvard. And after that, you can say, but it will not be dependent on who the individual was. So I think you should still be skeptical about this whole thing, not just कि इसकी वजह से हुआ है for the brand dilution.
But then that raises another question. So fine, you can curate your profile, and there was an entire system which still exists. I mean, you want to reach a particular course or college, and what you need to do is you need to understand the requirements and you work towards it. Maybe it takes a year, sometimes maybe less, and if you're not able to do it yourself, which is kind of tough for anybody to do, then they hire consultants, and then that application goes through, and obviously your chances of success increase. Is there going to be another similar formula for online education now, or do you think online is always going to be accessible, always going to be free? Because I don't think this model is going to continue for long. The free, scalable, accessible information for everyone.
I will say, see, one thing which you just said about the consulting, I think there is a wonderful book on this as well, written by a Stanford professor.
Stanford is good. Harvard is bad.
मुझे
Stanford
नाम
is...
याद नहीं आ रहा. नहीं, what I'm saying is the Stanford professor writes that how inaccessible these places are.
Hmm.
He was not in Stanford when he wrote the book. He was in some other state university, I think. But he wrote about it, and he went to Stanford, and I still find Stanford very inaccessible. I still say ki it will not be as rosy as it looks, but it will be far more accessible and far more diluted than it is today. And I think I'm cool with it.
Mhm. Interesting. So coming to my opinion, I think on this, I personally, always have supported and always will support democratization of access to information. Just because you don't know that something exists doesn't mean that you're not worthy of it. That's what I've always felt, because I've when I look at back at my life, I've missed a lot of opportunities, just because I didn't know about it, and it was out of my control. I had no, first of all, I had never had the idea that such a thing might exist, so I have to look for it, right? Even so, it was missing at that level. I could never really imagine that, a lot of things. So I personally think that more and more information should be available. It does confuse you, but then that's a good problem to have, because then somebody will come up with a solution to categorize that information, to make it more digestible. So more information is always good in the long run, I would say. In the short run, obviously, it creates a lot of chaos. People are now like thinking twice, Acha, whether I should go for this or that. That's okay. Those transitions definitely happen. But I feel that in the long run, it's going to be a really, really good thing. So, I mean, taking again the example of Jagriti Yatra. Jagriti Yatra is a very grassroots kind of a fellowship, right? Even though it has a big cost factor associated to it. But then again, they do offer some scholarships to some people, but that's about it. But the thing is, the information about Jagriti Yatra itself is not available, right? Like, making a decision of going into it and pursuing it is a different thing altogether. But if you don't know that such a thing exists, even if you had the resources and the will and the motivation to do it, you will not do it because you don't know if it existed, and then it's too late. So, and I'm talking about students from IIT. All right. When I was teaching IITians in Dhanbad, at ISM Dhanbad, none of them knew about Jagriti Yatra, and which is so sad, because Jagriti Yatra's top management actually has a lot of IITians. I mean, they could have accessed that alumni network anytime, but hardly anybody talks about it. So now I feel that those opportunities will become more accessible. It'll start with obviously the best institutions in the country and the people having the most access, but slowly it will trickle down. In the next 2 years, we will see it'll trickling down to people studying in Meerut in Chaudhary Charan Singh University also. So that trickle effect will start, and I think it's a step in the right direction. All right, I'm tired of speaking, guys. You have to take over now. Somebody has to take over. Any questions?
So when you are talking about Jagriti Yatra, I just want to say that you are very correct about it. आधे से ज़्यादा fellowships के बारे में people don't know. So that itself is a big problem. A lot of people don't know that there is a very good fellowship on TED. There is a very good fellowship on Aspen. Most people don't know about it. Ashoka fellowship is something that सबको पता है. PFI fellowship सबको पता है. So now we need to understand and figure it out how we can actually spread it about this fellowships. कैसे लोगों को पता चले, so that people can actually apply and be a part of the fellowship, which is missing. Because I see most people don't know. किसी को पूछते हो तो उनको पता ही नहीं होता कि there is some fellowship like that. So that is what I think our should be strategy, to kind of build a network or cater to the, like, maybe take it in schools, colleges, सबको बताना कि एक ऐसा fellowship है. But I don't know that how that's feasible also, because that is again something that's to be done by the government or someone who is heading that fellowship, or someone who has started that fellowship. Otherwise, it's not possible. So that's what I
So I just want to intervene here that now, if we explore, then there are a lot of platforms that provide a curated list of, opportunities that are there. I know for the fact that IDR Online is one platform, DevNet is one platform, uh, you know, NGO Box is one platform. There are a lot of Porche is one platform. There are a lot of platforms that are providing a curated list. That's the best resource that you can forward it to people, with curated list of fellowship, of jobs and everything. So I think these steps have been taken care of, like people are getting into that. And Network Capital, like we all got connected to Network Capital. So that's another platform that provides that information. So these things are happening, and I'm sure that because of these platform, the resources, the knowledge and information will start reaching out to more and more people soon.
Rajesh asked a question where she's saying, "Do you feel that the pandemic period had a role in reducing the brand value of education institutions?"
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think we've sort of answered this question, but in multiple facets, like it's not like pandemic ने कुछ कर दिया है, but the effect of pandemic in multiple ways has has done some good, some bad with respect to the brand value. And I think we just spoke about it, that the whole course being offered and people going online and this brand value getting diluted and everything. I think we've sort of answered it. Is there some new thought apart from all that?
I mean, I mostly agree with that, and I think brand value has diluted a lot for a lot of institutions, because I personally feel that a lot of institutions could not lie anymore. So people could make decisions before they actually joined them, because COVID-19 allowed a lot more time and flexibility when it came to admissions to certain universities. You were not stuck by paying fees over there once you realize the ground reality and all that. So people had more flexibility, slightly more, not a lot. But yeah, overall the dilution is there. I definitely want to continue from where Jasleen talked about. There are a bunch of platforms coming up. Like Porche was something which Pallavi, I think, introduced me to, the Telegram group, couple of Telegram groups actually, and Network Capital and IDR Online. And internationally also, these platforms existed before, like Opportunity Desk and a bunch of other places. The thing is, to know about these platforms also is very difficult unless you do good SEO. So Opportunity Desk has very good SEO. Network Capital has very bad SEO, and it's paid. So when you talk about Porche, yes, it's word of mouth. So asynchronously, it increases a lot. I mean, you can see the impact growing very well. The numbers keep increasing every day, but they don't go into thousands and lakhs, because that is what we want, right? We want everyone to have access, and that doesn't happen very well. As far as IDR Online is concerned, I mean, if you just look at IDR Online, I started following it, I think 4 or 5 months ago. Initially, they were talking about all academic, boring kind of articles, which I like to read. All of us like to read. But if you recently see their articles, the posts that they are publishing and boosting on Facebook, they're talking about which are very clickbait kind of an articles. I mean, I'm not against IDR Online. It's just that they've kind of moved into the social media way of doing marketing. Their articles are titled uh, 10 things that others should know about when they're sending an email. I mean, you are India Development Review. Why would I come to your website to know about what I should or should not write in my email or expect? So they are clickbait articles. They've hired an agency. They're paying them a retainer, monthly retainer, and their agency is like, we will get you more likes, we will get you more followers. Doesn't really matter if the information that you're providing is valuable or not.
True.
All right. So one more thing that I wanted to talk about before we conclude today's session was about personal growth, self-growth. What are the things outside the structured opportunity set that we have discussed, whether it be universities, fellowships, internships, etc.? What are the other things that one can do to grow, so that they don't completely waste their time during a crisis like this? Jasleen talked about that she was involved in some cooking, etc. Right, Jasleen?
Yes. I started learning things online.
Yeah. So
I started baking. Like I learned baking online. These are the things that I started exploring personally for myself.
Justin,
and
we haven't received an invitation yet.
yes.
Okay, so you have my invitation now. You can come to my place anytime.
So any other ideas, guys? What should people do to expand their skill set? Not only for professional skills, but also for life skills. Cooking is a very important life skill for professionals. So things like that.
I think it is very individual specific question, but like somebody might do reading, somebody there's whatever you want to learn. For example, I'm into a lot of chess, and this brings back I'm into chess, and this bring back to our question when we were discussing, that online ho gaya, uska value nahi rahi. But now when I earlier kya hota tha, people used to teach chess. It was not very online thing. It is only in last couple of years, and it has come in so much of online thing has come up. So पहले there used to be some people who used to teach chess, and आपके area में hardly there will be one person who will be teaching chess, and वो कैसा पढ़ाएगा? I'm not sure. But now it's like GMs, and you can see Carlson playing online, and you can learn from the best of the best. And Rajabaz is having it's his own academy. There is Nakamura is doing his own channel, and so you will see all the grades of chess. And if I watch Anand old games and everything, I feel so inspired that what kind of a player he was when he was a world champion. मतलब कुछ अलग ही level था. So I feel that personally for me it was more about reading and learning just how gambits work, how everything works. And similarly you can do, if somebody wants to, you can pick up any course. There are so many courses available for free if you want to learn a new skill, or there's something you want to come out of, or something is bothering you. I think it also gives you space to spend time with your family, invest in your children, or whatever. It can be anything. So the space is so large, so open. World is yours.
True, true. In fact, I remember taking, one of the first webinars that I took after the lockdown was for NIT Jalandhar LinkedIn local chapter at our college, and I made a presentation for it. There are definitely a bunch of things that you could do. I mean, we're towards. I hope this is the end of the lockdown and pandemic and whatever, but we all know that's still some time to go. So you can start learning a new language. That is one skill which will always help you, depending on which language you learn. Then another factor is you start learning certain hard skills.
Duolingo.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Duolingo, if that helps you, great. The other
And
factor
people
is
don't know, Duolingo is great.
it
Yeah,
is quite interesting. Then apart from learning languages, there are certain hard skills that you should develop. Like every crisis tells you what to do in life now, because that is going to be the norm. Digital is the norm. So if you could spend time in learning new digital skills, I think that is something really valuable. It's going to help you somewhere or the other in the future as well. And I think those are two new things I could add over here. Apart from that, I think we're done for this session. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Promoting Duolingo, merci beaucoup.
Promoting Duolingo and not promoting IDR online. I think that just balances things out. All right. See you guys next year. I hope all of you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope 2021 is much, much better, or at least just normal as compared to 2020. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.